By choosing a slow shutter speed, not only does this allow more light onto the sensor, it also blurs any movement. The slower the shutter speed, the more blur will be created. If your intention is to create blur by using a slower shutter speed, you will need to compensate for more light entering the lens by increasing your aperture to a higher f-stop. Alternatively, you can use what's known as a neutral density filter, and we'll discuss this later in the chapter Accessories. You can see in this image, the blades of the fan are blurred at 1/25th of a second, but give the sense of movement. Note the f-stop is 8 and the ISO is 1600. We'll look at ISO in the next section, but the higher the ISO, the more sensitive the sensor is to light. Now the shutter speed has doubled to 250th of a second, and the blades, while still showing motion, aren't as blurred. Note the f-stop has come down one stop to f5 to allow more light in, since the higher shutter speed is allowing less light in. The shutter speed has doubled again, and the blades are not as blurry, showing less movement. Note the f-stop has been reduced again by one stop, f5, to allow more light in, since the higher shutter speed is allowing less light in. At 1,000th of a second, the shape of the blades can be seen with slight movement. Note the f-stop is now at 2.8 to allow more light in, since the higher shutter speed is allowing less light in. At 1250th of a second, the blades have slight movement. Now the aperture remains the same despite doubling the shutter speed. That is because 2.8 on this particular lens is the lowest setting or the widest the aperture will open. So instead, the ISO has been raised to 2000 to compensate for the higher shutter speed that allows less light in. At 2500th of a second, the blades are still, as though the fan is not on at all. As the most important aspect I wanted to capture in this image is the freezing of the blade movement, the shutter speed takes priority for this to happen. I have no choice but to set the shutter speed to 2500th of a second to achieve this freeze. Because of the high shutter speed, very little light is reaching the sensor, so I need to lower my f-stop, that is, increase the size of the aperture to compensate. Given that I am at the maximum aperture for this lens of 2.8, I have several choices. I could move the subject outside where it is brighter, or use a flash or other type of artificial lighting. If these are not possible, a final choice is to further increase the ISO, which in this case is now 4000, to achieve the correct exposure. As the photographer, that is the artist, you need to make setting choices based on your goal for the image. Does the picture require a sense of motion? Then use a slow shutter speed and a higher aperture or ISO. Does the subject need to stand out from the background so there is a sense of a third dimension? Then use a low f-stop and compensate by increasing the shutter speed. Next, let's look at ISO.